Welcome to the show, man. We're looking forward to this for a while.
Thank you for having me, man.
So, you got a great story. I did not know you were as young as you are, and you got an impressive portfolio you've built up in a very short period of time. So, I just really wanted to bring you on to tell the listeners and viewers here, like, what is possible, not only in New York, which is like the hardest market, but just how you can really build this business and we'll really concentrate on rentals today. Cause people say, like, 10 years ago was the time to buy rentals. And like, you've done it in, the last 4 or 5 years in Long Island out of all places. So let's just start with, what does your portfolio look like today? And then we'll reverse engineer on how you got there.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Last night, I had dinner with a guy who's worth about 350 million dollars. And you meet these guys, and their number one regret is always not holding on to property. It's always the same regret. I wish I didn't sell. I wish I didn't sell. And he's like, Will, stop flipping. Just hold on to everything. Sometimes we think that we can't buy rentals because of the market, because of the interest rates, because of the location, whatever it is. What I can tell you is that it's possible in any market and it's possible in any location. I just closed on Tuesday, actually, election day. I just added another 3 units to my portfolio here on Long Island. It's possible. People are doing it. I'm doing it. Out of all people, I'm probably one of the least qualified to do it. I came back to this country at the age of 14, 8 of us in one bedroom, no heat. We actually had to boil hot water on the electric stove to be able to shower. Really, really tough. Actually the only one of my siblings that didn't even graduate college. And today I'm at 49 units. Most of my portfolio is here on Long Island. And we got big goals, man. Just looking to build generational wealth so that my kids and my kids' kids don't have to go through what I had to go through.
That's an amazing story, man. Where were you at before the age of 14? Where did you come from?
So I moved to the Dominican Republic when I was about between 6, 7 years old, lived there for 7 years.
And then you came back at age 14, and then you grew up in Suffolk, right?
That's right. We moved to the DR. My father was complaining about the cold a lot. My father's actually from this country. And turns out when we moved there, we found out he actually had another family there. So he wanted to have both families close. That's why we moved there. And then by the time my mother found out, there was a lot of alcohol, a lot of abuse that was going on. So we had no choice but to actually flee the country because my father was the breadwinner, my mother was a stay-at-home mom, and then when he left, we had no child support, we had no kind of way to pay the bills, so we had no choice but to come to my grandmother's house. She had a house in Central Islip. We had a one-bedroom. That's where we all went.
Holy smokes. How many, 80 you guys?
It was 8 of us, so it was my mother, my older brother, myself, my sister, my younger brother, my grandmother, my aunt, and my cousin, so it was 8 of us in a one-bedroom. She bought that house in 2006. She actually never had a legit on-the-books job. She doesn't even speak English to this day. She just became a US citizen last month after living here for over 20 years. But she got that mortgage back when dogs could get mortgages, and what she did was she rented, it was a Cape. If you know Long Island, there's a lot of house hacking here, especially in Central Islip, Brentwood, those areas. She rented the main floor of the Cape, the basement apartment, and there was a garage apartment. She rented those 3 units. And then on the second floor of the Cape, it was like a one-bedroom studio. That's where we all lived. And the other 3 units paid the mortgage and the bills.
That's incredible, man. It just shows the resourcefulness because a lot of people always say, like, oh, Long Island rentals don't work or it's harder, which it might be. And we'll get into that later. But look at your grandma, being resourceful and finding a way to make it work because, at the end of the day, she owned property in a great location. But you started from very humble beginnings in a one bedroom apartment with 8 people. How did you even get to the point where, number one, you became an entrepreneur? Because you also, are a very successful flipper and realtor on the island. So, like, how did you get started and start to get some momentum to where you now can expand your business?
Yeah, man. So I tried going to community college. I thought I wanted to become a psychologist. And through that, living in that situation, I went to college and I worked 3 jobs at the same time. And I just got fed up, man. I just wondered, how can I be successful? Because my thought process was, you had to get born into this. You can't be
Yeah.
rich. There's no rags to riches. That doesn't exist. Until I started Googling and YouTubing how to be rich, how to be successful. This guy, Ty Lopez, came up garage filming videos. He was like, I lived in a mobile home park and now he's got the Rolls Royce and the Lambo in the back. So I'm like, man, I got to listen to this guy and see what worked for him. So he had a course for sale at the time. I couldn't afford it. I did research. It was based off of this book. So I bought the book instead. The book was called Success Principles by Jack Canfield. And underneath that book was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So I bought
Oh,
both
no.
of those books that day, actually. And I became so intrigued. I still get goosebumps telling the story because I started reading those books. I probably didn't read any book before that. Maybe some high school book that we were assigned, and I did the Spark Notes. I didn't even finish the book, but I read those two books and my life changed. The concept that I got was that you are in control, you are responsible for your destiny. And I said, wow, if I'm in control, I better stop complaining. I better stop blaming my mother for not learning English and not becoming a nurse and being able to get out of here because we were on food stamps. We were on welfare. Our only hope to get out of that place, to be honest with you, was a Section 8 wait list that we had enlisted. It was year 5 or 6, and the wait time was about 7 years for us to get into our own homes through Section 8. And I just put on my big boy pants and I said, I'm going to get my real estate license. I got my real estate license while I was going to school. While I was a lifeguard at the same time, I was doing landscaping and I was delivering burritos for a restaurant as a delivery boy. I got my real estate license, and every delivery that I had, I started giving my cards away. I'd look at them and I'd say, hey, by the way, have you thought about selling your home? They'd look at me like I had two heads. Like, what does this kid do? I was 19 years old, still
Oh,
had braces, no facial hair. And people were looking at me like I'm nuts. Like, why are you asking me that? But I started giving my cards out. And then I set a goal. I said, I'm going to knock on 100 doors a day. And that's how I built my business. The goal of me selling real estate was to make as much money as possible so that I could buy rentals. And that's how it started.
dude, that is crazy because I don't think I told the audience yet. How old are you right now?
I'm 27 now.
So you were born in 1997
That's right.
and you are younger than the host right now, who isn't that old either, me. And this wasn't that long ago, right? Like this was not even 10 years ago. You started on your journey from literally rags to riches. And it's funny, we were both lifeguards. I used to be a lifeguard as well. That was a soul sucking job to say the
So
least.
I
Right.
almost drowned. And that's
Well, I
so
was a pool lifeguard.
did they make you go to the deep end, get the brick and
Oh,
swim on
yeah. You
back
gotta
with
put it
it?
on your chest. Of course, of course. Yeah, I didn't like that. The takeaway I want people to realize here is that a lot of people, like you said, have that terrible attitude on like, "Oh, I can't do this. It's not for me," or whatever. Like, Will literally was living in a one-bedroom apartment with 7 other people, and he had no money, no resources, no network, but he found a way to become successful because of the books he read and ultimately the people he started to associate himself with, which I'm sure contributed to some of his success. So if you're listening to this podcast and you're in a situation that's like Will's, maybe better, maybe worse, there's a way out. There's a way for you through your own effort and attitude to get to a better place and build what Will has built. Especially too, I mean, I got to tip my hat to you because you did this in Suffolk and Nassau County, which is like people don't understand doing real estate in the New York City suburbs, whether it's the city or Long Island or the Hudson Valley. It's completely different than doing real estate anywhere else. So you started building up your active income through door knocking. I'm guessing you were going for mostly listings in the beginning?
That's right. I always been a heavy lister. That was always my focus. So I started knocking on those doors, started calling for sale by owners, expireds, and we started listing them.
And how long did it take you to make your first 6 figures in commission income when you first started?
It took me 3 years. My first year, I made $13,000. My second year, I went up to around $50,000. And then that third year, I just scratched 100 grand. I started seeing momentum. I started getting the hang of things. And, the more doors you knock on, the more people you call, the more people you meet. And I met this one guy that actually really helped me. He was a for sale by owner. I listed 4 properties for him, and he was a flipper. we got into this great relationship. His name's Romy. And he said, Will, why don't you invest with me? So I would blindly give him money. Anything I had saved up, I'd combine it with my mother's savings as well. I think the first time we gave him 20 grand and he would give us great returns, but we didn't have any paperwork, nothing in writing. It was all straight trust. And we grew that money with him until he then said, Hey, there's this property. Why don't we go in on this? I'm looking for 50 grand. I forget what he was going to give us as the return. When I looked at the property, mind you, at that time, that was my second year in real estate. I had 1 year of 50 grand to show for income, no credit, no money in the bank. My mother never made more than 30 grand a year working like minimum wage factory jobs. So we couldn't qualify for a mortgage, but we went to go see that property in 2018. And that was the house I helped my mother buy. She still lives there now. That was a dream for us because we did it. We were so committed. We were going to figure it out. That's how committed we were. We moved forward without having any resources to make it happen. Only God did it. All the glory to God. And that property, we actually surprised our whole family. Only her and I knew about it. We surprised each sibling one by one. They couldn't believe it. My sister was crying. My brother, nobody believed it.
That's incredible. And she still lives there to this day.
She still lives there to this day.
That's
Yep.
amazing. Did you guys do like a creative deal or how did you guys end up structuring that?
Yeah. So Romy wanted a $50,000 assignment fee. He had that deal for 130 grand. That house today is worth around 700,000. So he had that deal for 135. He wanted 50 grand to give us the deal. And he hooked us up with a hard money lender where we actually didn't have to put any money down. There was so much equity in the deal. So I'm sure they just were okay with lending us 100% of the purchase price. And we fixed it up just literally as I got commissions, I was pouring it all into the renovations. We were pooling our resources together, my brother, myself, my mother, fixing this property up. And then we refinanced that property and paid the hard money off. And my mom walked away with a nice chunk of change.
Tax free and she still keeps the asset.
So that has 3 units in it. The 2 units more than pay for her mortgage. She's getting paid to live there right now.
That's amazing. And people always say like, "Oh, you can't make it work in New York because of taxes," and we'll get into all that. But it's the resourcefulness, it's getting a good deal, it's following the principles of good real estate investing that lead to these types of outcomes, right? And like, look at this, you got a beautiful house in Bay Shore, and I'm sure when she refinanced, I got to imagine she got it before the rates went up through the roof, so she probably got a good interest rate on that. I'd
She
imagine.
has a 3.125 and she owes like 220 grand on that house. She's got over 400 grand of equity in that.
That's beautiful. Congrats on her. Congrats on all you guys. That's incredible.
Thank you.
So you got the active income business you're doing, you're doing flips, you got listings, but while you're doing this, you built up roughly 50 properties in Long Island, right? Out of all places. So let's just cover the geographic Long Island issues first and how you're making it work. And then we'll talk about what you're doing to find these deals and how you make the numbers and all that stuff makes sense. So I'm just going to give people like little Long Island, 101. In Nassau County, usually the taxes are a lot higher than Suffolk, depending on where it is. Like I think in Suffolk, you know more than me, there's like certain areas where the taxes are usually a little bit lower when you start going east. So where are most of these properties that you own? Are they Nassau, Suffolk? Just give me the lay of the land on where these are.
Most of my portfolio is in Bay Shore.
Okay.
The average price point in Bay Shore is right around 560. And the average taxes on a single family home are about $10,000 a year, depending on where in Bay Shore, because Bay Shore has different sections. You could be on the south side of Bay Shore and have $30,000 of property taxes on a single family home, but you could be on, like I have a duplex, my property taxes are actually $7,000. So depending on where it's located, on average, you're looking at around between 10 and 11.
So 10, 11 grand on like, 550 plus, value. That's high for the country, but it's not bad for local, like Long Island. Cause there's areas in Westchester, not far from where I grew up, where you got a house worth, 800 grand and your property taxes are 45 grand a year. So it really depends
Wow.
on where yeah, no, it's bad. It's crazy, man. So let's talk about, like, are these multifamily properties? Are these singles? Like, how are you making these numbers work where you got higher taxes and, higher purchase prices? Like, what are you doing to make these numbers work?
So this is my strategy. I don't buy anything on market. So what I do is I look for multiple electric meters wherever I'm looking to buy. So let's just say Babylon, which is in Suffolk County here on Long Island. I'll drive around the town and just look for properties that have multiple electric meters. I'll take the address down and then I'll skip trace the owner. So I use resources like Spokio, for example. You plug the address in or batch skip tracing, whatever tracing source you want to use. And when I get the homeowner's information, what a lot of people will do is call that homeowner and say, "Hey, would you be interested in selling? Hey, do you want a cash offer?" I have a little bit of a different approach. I want to establish a relationship with that homeowner. Most people like talking about themselves and sharing their story. So what I do is I call them up and I say, "Hey, I'm a young guy. I'm investing in the area. I see you own some property in the area. I would love to learn more about your story. Would you be open to grabbing lunch?" And I actually meet with that person, and all I do is listen to them. I don't talk about myself. I don't talk about, "Hey, I'd love to buy your property." All I do is listen to them and ask them questions about themselves. And I go deep to the point where we're done. And then they start asking me questions about myself, but it's not about me. So that's something that I do a little bit different. I'll then, after our meeting, send them a little gift. Let's say, like the guy I was with last night, he likes cigars, Monte Cristo brand. I'll send him a little box of cigars. I like to pick up on little details and send them gifts depending on what they tell me with a nice handwritten note, and they're going to remember you forever. They remember me. I keep in touch with them quarterly. Hey, Happy New Year, Merry Christmas. I send them a Christmas card. They know that I want to buy their property.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
just haven't said it. So
Yeah.
by the time they're ready to sell, who do you think they're going to call first?
You.
That's right. And I bought 13 units from just one guy using this strategy.
See, that is called being strategic, my friends, because a lot of people would say, oh my God, I got to talk to 13 owners to buy 13 houses. But if you can build one relationship the right way with the right person, a lot of these guys who own real estate, it just gets passed on to the next investor when they're ready to sell. So if the guy's got 14 units and you're speaking to the only guy, that's how you can really grow your portfolio. So when you're buying these, Will, are you like, I'll give you an example. Like I just bought I bought 2 last week. I bought them roughly at about 60% of the value with the tenants inside, sight unseen. So that's how I got a good deal on them. What is kind of your approach? Because I've realized in my area, which is very similar to yours, almost the same market, if I don't get the property at least 75% of value, and let's say it's a single family house, it will cost $500 a month.
Yeah, so I want to buy at 70 cents on the dollar. And there has to be some sort of value add in the deal because I want to be able to refinance that property and get my money back out. So that's something I look for. After I refinance, depending on the property, I am going to want between a 12 to 20% cash on cash return. And I say depending on the property, let me give you an example. So if it's a very nice brick 5 unit in a very nice location, I will take a lower return. I'll maybe even go down. There's this one property right now that I should be buying next year. I've been in touch with this guy. He had a three family in West Babylon, knocked on the door, the tenant answered. He gave me the number. Been keeping in touch with him for 2 years. I've gotten four deals out of that so far, and I should be buying a four family. This is a very unique property on Long Island. I know most people that live in different areas, four families are easy to come by. This is a four family. Each unit is three bedrooms, brick
Oh,
building, walking distance to the train station. So I should be buying this from him next year. I'll take an 8% return. So there are exceptions, but rule of thumb, if it's a rougher area, I'm looking for 20% or better.
when you say rough area, are you talking about like Shirley and those areas?
Massive,
Mastic?
surely. Yeah, I
Can
have a
you
few
still
of
get
them
good
there.
deals out there, or do those values just start exploding now?
So I did a deal this year. My buddy called me up. He's like, "Well, this guy came into the open house. He's a tenant at a house. I spoke to the owner. The owner wants to sell it, but he wants to sell it with the tenants in, and the tenants want to stay. Would you buy this property with the tenants in it? I'm like, sure. What's the seller willing to do in terms of terms or price? What's he want to do? We negotiated, I think I told you about this, a subject to the existing mortgage deal. I bought that property for 290. It's worth 450. And the guy has a 180 mortgage on it at 4%. So I'm cash flowing $1,600, Section 8 rented for $3,100. My mortgage is 1480.
Oh my God.
Dude, sick deal. I walked into the deal with over 100 grand of equity. The one I bought on Tuesday that was in Shirley, that I walked into that deal with 150 grand of equity, and that one is cash flowing 2,500 bucks a month. I closed at 12 o'clock. 4 o'clock, I met at the property and took a deposit.
Oh, for a new tenant. That's crazy. So I got a question about this sub two deal. How did you, number one, get the seller's attorney on board to do that? And number two, because he owed less than what you paid for it, did he owner finance the balance to you, or did you have to come out of pocket?
There was about $100,000 that needed to come from somewhere. So at first we negotiated $100,000 second position in the form of seller finance, 0% for with a 10-year balloon. Then the seller came back and said that he needed 50 grand to pay off some credit cards and that he would finance the other 50. And then they came back, and I think it was the attorney or something where we couldn't do it. They just wouldn't let it fly. So what I did was I leveraged my insurance policy. So there's a concept called infinite banking. I would highly recommend everybody look into this, where you could be your own bank and leverage life insurance policies to purchase real estate. I bought a 24 unit apartment complex with my whole life insurance policy. That's a whole other conversation. But I used the 100 grand from my life insurance policy to pay the seller, and then I took over the mortgage for 180. That's where I got the money. And I bought that about 6 months ago. I could refi into a DSCR loan and cash out. I could cash out big, but I have a $1,400 payment that just doesn't make sense right now. So I'm holding.
Did the attorney, when you did that deal for the seller, did he let you take it over sub two in perpetuity, or is there like a balloon where you have to get the sub two loan out of the guy's name?
No,
Holy
no.
shit, dude.
This seller still, any mail he gets, he forwards it to me. We keep in touch. I know his wife. He's like, hey, I got the permit renewal for the Section 8. He sent it to me. I have his login for the bank. I just changed the username and password, make
Yeah,
the pay myself. That's on auto pay. Dude, it was it's a home run deal.
that's a grand slam. You got the best of both worlds. You got equity, cash flow, the fact that it's on Long Island too. So hats off to you for finding that one, man. That's obviously a legacy property. But when you're buying, not creatively, if you're just going to buy a property at, 70% of the value minus whatever fix up costs, are you using a hard money guy to get into these deals? Are you using your life policy? Are you raising private capital? Like, what are you doing to initially get into these rentals before you go refinance them?
A mixture of everything. I just signed a contract last week for a single family home in Copeg. Now, I have multiple different ways that I'll fund a deal. So I have a guy, a private lender that'll finance 100% of the purchase. He just wants 6 months of interest guaranteed, 10%, no points. And then what I've been doing a lot of is I have a hard money lender, no prepayment penalty, 10% down. So he'll loan me 90% of the purchase, 10% down, interest 10%, 1.5 points. So what I do is I raise the gap. So let's say it's 10% of 400,000, that's 40 grand plus closing costs. Let's just call it 60,000 total. I'll just start hitting people up. Yo, you want to make 10% on your money? I'm looking for 60 grand. They wire me the 60 grand. We sign a promissory note. I set them up on an automatic Zelle so they get their 10% every month. I get the 60 grand. I buy the deal. And that's what I did on Shirley, the deal I closed on Tuesday.
That's a great strategy, especially when there's equity, because in Long Island, a gap payment is 50 to 70,000 versus if you're in, the suburbs of Cincinnati, it's 5 to 6,000. So you got a lot more zeros in Long Island. People don't understand the closing costs in New York. Like it's insane. Even the mortgage recording tax. I
20
mean,
grand. I'll
Oh,
close it
yeah.
for 20 grand.
Right? Just mortgage recording tax is 1% of the loan. If you're getting a loan for 400 grand, that's $4,000 just mortgage recording tax. That doesn't include anything else. Attorney fees are $2,000 usually. So, you're finding a way to make it work. So, what's your vision for the future? Like, are you looking to buy more of these like smaller multis and singles? Or are you looking to maybe 1031 or whatever into like apartment buildings? And my last question after that is, do you own any properties outside of Long Island?
Yeah, so I want to get to 50 grand a month net income from my passive real estate investing portfolio. I'm at about 20 grand right now. Uh, I do the 24 unit apartment complex is in Arkansas. One of the
Oh,
worst mistakes that I have made in my investing career. I'm not losing, it's just not the deals that I'm used to, like here on Long Island. You got to understand when you're buying these cheap rentals, you're dealing with different class of people. These are people that have different habits. They have 3 pit bulls and they destroy your property. It's just a different deal. Too much turnover, very unstable. These families don't have stability. A lot of them are on welfare. It's just a different mentality. And, we have good equity that doesn't balloon until late 2026. So we're not going to lose on the deal. It cash flows like 4 grand a month, but the amount of money and energy I've spent on that deal, I could have done 5 deals and made triple what I'm making there
yeah.
on Long Island. So my takeaway from that deal is invest in what you know, invest in your backyard. That's my take.
So that Arkansas deal, obviously, that's not even anywhere near Long Island. What was attractive about it besides probably the purchase price and the cap rate, or at least the pro forma cap rate? That
The
was a value.
rents were 495 a door. We raised them to 750 a door right now, trying to get to 800 a door by the end of the year. So that value add, but I say invest in where you know because there's no bodies of water near this building, but the water table's high. So our units kept flooding and we've probably spent around 300 grand fixing stuff up there,
Oh, God.
money down the drain. So if I sell right now, I'll probably make 50 grand. And I owned it for 2 years already. So, not worth the headaches.
Did you outsource the management to that or you do it all
Yes.
remotely? Oh, so you
We
got
have a
it. Yeah.
property manager there.
Yeah. And that's kind of like no man's land with property management because it's not enough to really get a good manager, I bet, but it's not like you can build that
Exactly.
yourself.
There's
Yeah.
one manager in town.
What part of Arkansas is this in?
This is in Ward, Arkansas by Cabot, about 25 minutes from north of Little Rock.
Did you get it from a wholesaler?
No, so I have a 50-50 partner on that deal. My partner is part of this network, and one of his friends lives in Arkansas. She brought the deal to him, he brought it to me, and we teamed up and bought it together.
Interesting. And then one more thing about the management, because now you got a lot of units, and New York is a relatively hard place to be a landlord in terms of evictions. How do you deal with, problem tenants in New York when the law is not in your favor and, maybe buying properties with inherited tenants? Because I feel like, at least me, I've made mistakes with my tenants where I've kind of been a little too much of a hard ass. And it usually ended up in, an eviction court situation that took me, and I've had one that took me 2 years. It was a circus because of the laws in New York.
So I have bought properties with squatters in them. I have bought properties with tenants and drastically raised the rent because the previous owner had very low rents. And I have come in similar situation where I start enforcing certain rules that they weren't accustomed to.
Yeah.
You have to get tough on these people because if you don't, they'll walk all over you. I factor everything into my numbers. I'm doing a flip right now that I bought with a squatter in January. It took me 11 months to evict them. We'll still clear 6 figures on that flip, but I was comfortable taking the risk because I underwrote the deal correctly. I'm a very conservative underwriter. It's all in the numbers.
That's what I tell people. I say, listen, if the deal makes sense, I'll buy it with no matter who's inside. I just see there's a big opportunity, especially in like the New York, Washingtons, LAs of the world, where if you're willing to buy properties with tenants inside, you can get a lot more deals than some of these other guys because they just don't want to deal with tenants. And I get it. So, Will, man, this has been a good interview. You got a great story. It's incredible to see the progress you've made in a short period of time. So if people want to follow you and continue watching your journey, what is the best way to do that?
Instagram is William at William.odo. That's probably the best place to find me.
Sweet. We'll put that in the show notes and, man, keep up the great stuff. It's awesome to see your growth.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.